Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is some kind of second part. Okay. I also wanted to ask you about test plan. So maybe you had experience to write your own test plan, or maybe as quality assurance lead of your project, he shared with you some test plan. What do you think is required topics that should be included to test plan for manual and automation testing?
Mm, Actually, I heard about test plans um, many years ago, and I'm completely considered that nobody using them. But I remember the case from my practice when I established on my previous work. Actually, I kind of established the testing process. And to be sure that we're doing it right, I made a document. So basically, what concretely do we do when we test?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is kind of test plan, but not with all the required requisites that we see in the
Okay.
internet. Uh, yes.
Okay, it's okay. So your project will be done even without test plan. But
Mm-hmm.
usually it means like you still need to, I don't know, write it down to be on the same page with the team. For
Mm-hmm.
example, sometimes it could be even called for other words. For example, on my previous project, we don't have a document called test plan, but we have team structure, we have
Mm-hmm.
onboarding plan, we have a wiki with, I don't know, what is severity, what is priority for our
Mm-hmm.
concrete project. We have, I don't know, documentation about how to work with our testing frameworks. I don't know, our release cycles. So it's maybe not in one document, maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
not even everything covered, but still some part of that should be somewhere. Maybe it's not
Mm-hmm.
even write it down, maybe it's in head of your quality assurance lead or some kind of it, but still it will be somewhere. So can you
Mm-hmm.
just mention the things that you think are like most required? So without that, it will be difficult to complete the project. I don't know,
Um,
top five that should be.
Actually, you mentioned a lot of them. So first, some introductory document to your uh, application. I think that's important. So when someone comes to the project, uh, he should start learning firstly the application because he's gonna work with it most of the time. Uh, Also, maybe list of useful links.
Hmm.
Mm, Also, you mentioned the onboarding list. Maybe it's kind of overlaps with a list of useful links with the onboarding list, but that's also worth mention. What else? Let me think. Mm, mhm. And documentation, I think this should be that it deserves a lot of pages and subpages about the process of different kinds of testing, like
Hmm.
how to perform manually, and maybe in this document you should describe in detail how is your kind of working day, what is it consists of, or not working day and maybe sprint, what activities should you perform, how you do it, how you mention how you perform communication, paperwork, bureaucracy, etc.
Hmm.
This is one of the maybe um, most important documents. What else? Maybe some API, mm, some specific documentation about the application, some API description, maybe some I forgot how to call Swagger.
Hmm.
Um, I think it is already 5. Yes.
Okay, okay, I got it. Yeah. Okay, sure. If I ask, excuse, 5 topics, okay, we can
Mm-hmm.
finish on that. Okay, probably in first, uh, it's okay. So let's move on. We didn't cover one thing that we need to cover when you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned testing framework. This is a UI part, Selenium, Selenium, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So could you please firstly describe what is Selenium and what is Selenite and what's the difference?
Mm-hmm. Actually, Selenium is a kind of pack of tools. It can be Selenium Grid, Selenium IDE, Selenium WebDriver, and some kind of drivers. If you need, we can mention it, the every part of it in detail, but I think you more
Okay,
asking.
let's stick on Selenium WebDriver.
Yes. Yes, you mentioned about what's the difference between Selenium WebDriver and Selenite. Um, I, from my experience, I remember that Selenite is a wrapper for Selenium. The main goal is to write less code with the doing the same work. Uh, Also, what I remember, you don't have to deal with the WebDriver instances
Mhm,
while you using Selenite, and you have mm, built-in exp implicitly wait.
mhm,
So in Selenium WebDriver, it completely raw and you configure it by yourself. But in Selenite, there are something pre-configured and it's meant mm, to make tests more stable.
mhm. Do you know
Then
why there are such a lot of difference? It's actually based on that Selenium and Selenite built initially for different purpose.
Um, yeah, I heard that historically, Selenium didn't build, wasn't made for actually automation testing,
Mhm.
and Selenite actually was, as
Yeah,
I saw.
actually, this is the main difference. Like
Mm-hmm,
Selenium used only for automation browser, and we are okay. We have a tool for automation browser. Let's use it for automation testing.
mm-hmm,
And we need to build all that waiters and checking and etc. by our own because it's not implemented. It's not
mm-hmm.
out of box. But Selenium did it for us, so we can use it.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move on to something concrete, like, for example, when you need to write a scenario, let's imagine that, for example, you on a web page, it contains several fields, for example, login, password, button, sign in, and so kind of it. So
Mm-hmm,
let's imagine that you need to cover it. And first of all, how you're going to find locator for all that elements, which strategy you will use, and what is the best strategy for you, I know, if you will be able to assign a task for UI developers. Like, for example, you need to follow that rules for creating UI elements. What will
mm-hmm.
be your goal? What will be your task?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most stable way is, I think, is to actually, how did you say, create the task for developers, for front-end developers, and uh, ask them to assign a static ID attribute to all the elements that we are going to be interact with. This can by doing this, we can very reliably point our WebDriver which concrete element we should
Mm-hmm.
interact with. The second scenario is when you should use locators. So if you don't have this ID that I mentioned previously, you must write XPath. The disadvantage of this, if we say that XPath has some, of course, it's not the full, just raw full path like HTML slash blah 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 slash. It may consist of just two slashes, but it's still not reliable as just defining the ID, because it can suffer. This XPath can suffer from some changes in the layout. So unique string, unique ID to each of the element is the best way.
Okay, let's imagine we don't have unique static data. What will be your priority? For example, there isn't a text of element. I don't know, maybe like main page title, yeah? There is a class, I don't know, main page class, or it should be have specific URL or some kind of it, or maybe other tags. So what will be your priority of
I
picking up?
think basically, if we define element in such way, we should rely not on one attribute, but maybe on two, or on three. For example, if we have button, we definitely will have the attribute that its input type equals button. And also on this button, we have some text. And maybe if it's traditional login page, and if it is login button, it is surely that text on this button will be unique on the whole page. So if you say something, type equals button and text equals submit, that would be workable. So yeah, the strategy is more like you define some not unique one element attribute, but unique combination of attributes of each element that you need to reach.
Yeah. So on the one hand, you need to find locators that will uniquely identify element. But on the other hand, if something will change, is it better to have such XPath locators that will not be broken? So let's imagine that you have button. What could be changed? Maybe the name of the button from UI part. I don't know, maybe firstly it's sign in, then for any other translation, it will be another word. But still, I don't know, class of that button will be unchangeable, only visible name. So for that case, maybe visible name shouldn't be in your XPath because it's the item that will be changed time to time. You added a new translation for another region of the Earth, then you had updated the locator. So each time when you're changing name of your like literals and translation, you don't want to have another locator. It should be the
Yeah.
same one locator that will be applicable for every translation. So maybe in such case, first priority will be stable classes, and only after that, name of the element. I think it's
But
more appropriate for that case. Yeah.
I suppose this fits only when we have the separate class on each element. Of course, if we have
Yeah, yeah.
such, yeah.
It could be that you don't have anything, even a stable
Yeah.
name, and it will be generated randomly each time, some kind of. For such case, it's actually could be and what you are going to do. For example, there is a list of elements. You know only locator of the main elements that include all the childs. And each child has, for example, button delete. So you need to delete, for example, the last element from the list. What will be your strategy to find the locator? You cannot find locator of that element because it's randomly generated. You know only locator of the parent, and you know that it should include I don't know, list of elements, and each element has button, but button also randomly generated.
Mm-hmm. Yes, all we have to rely in this situation is the index, actually. So if we know that we want to delete a last element, and then we want to measure the length, the size of this list,
Mhm.
and then just just do the size -1, and there will be an index of this element, and then in your XPath you can write locator for this element slash as I remember square braces. Oh, no. Locator of this element, then slash. It's hard to write XPath.
XPath, yeah. I got it. Probably you're right. So,
Yeah.
but
So by
first thing
index.
you need to write XPath query that will gather
Mm-hmm.
not one element, but list of elements.
Mm-hmm.
And to get specific index, you can use square brackets probably and put like
Yes.
0 as first element.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. So maybe you need to calculate how many it have, but I'm
Yes.
not sure. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can move to button, like any button, and click on
Mm-hmm.
it. Probably
Yes.
that will be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to other case. For example, you automated all that things, you click on sign in, then it will calculate something, you have pop-up window like I'm doing something,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be 1 second, 10 second, you don't know. And then it will have a home page with everything. How you will handle that situation when there will be pop-up, or it could be even any without any pop-up, it will be 1 second or 5 second or 10 second, or maybe it will
Mm-hmm.
not load at all. How you will handle that?
There are two ways basically. I think the most reliable and convenient way is to implement implicit wait on this. So the
Mhm,
logic will be the following, I think. So after we click this login button, we write something that we have to wait until this loader disappears. And in this construction, we also can set a maximum timeout. So
mhm,
if we have 5 minutes, we can set, I don't know, 7, just in case.
mhm,
It's not realistic values, of course, but yes, I think the strategy would be something like that.
mhm. Okay, and so what's the difference between implicit, explicit, and it's also a third option? It's called fluent wait. Do you know the
Mm.
difference?
I didn't uh, learn the fluent wait to be honest,
Actually,
but
explicit wait is like subset of fluent wait. It
mm-hmm.
inherited. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, implicit wait is kind of wait by default. So it is applied to every action of that we have in test. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, if we have to click some button and it's not appeared, uh, if we have implicit wait in this situation, we just wait for this button to be appeared. But it's not fit the complexity. It's not always fit our needs.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we must wait for something more complicated and more complicated. Okay. For example, let's say our button after appearance, our button appears, and then after more second, 1 second, it became active. And this 1 second when it's inactive, we cannot solve by just implicitly wait. We also have to define that we wait firstly when this appear button, and second when it becomes active.
Mm-hmm. And anything about Fluent?
You said that implicit is a subset of Fluent, right? So Fluent is
Explicit. Okay,
explicit.
Fluent wait is more like, for example, you need to wait 1 minute of something, but you're
Mm-hmm.
going to check that it's working every 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So the maximum number and from which time slot you're going to recheck it. So you're
And
configuring that. But explicit using that for specific constant. That's why
like
Fluent. Yeah, yeah,
500 millisecond. Uh-huh.
yeah,
So yeah, Fluent is when you configure time of retries, right?
yeah. Retry time, yeah.
Uh-huh. Super. That's very
Or
useful to know.
delay. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can Google it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, probably we're done with UI. So let's move on to something like we created all that scenarios. What's we are going to do next? Are we going to execute it locally, or we are going to use some jobs pipeline, etc. What's your opinion? What's your experience?
Um, I think it's much better to include these scenarios in a pipeline, of course, because if you manage to make your tests stable, without some false alarms, that tests will show the real bugs potentially in
Mm-hmm.
your application. So yes, of course, it's better to run these tests after every building, for example. So yes.
Okay, and do you have experience of creating pipelines, jobs, or you just used already created?
Just used already created.
Okay, and in which systems you're using? Jenkins, Bamboo?
Jenkins. Hmm.
Okay. And theoretically, how do you think is it will be? For example, you have a task to create your own pipeline or job. What do you think you are going to do?
Um, hmm. Theoretically, so every pipeline consists of steps. There should be some trigger that we should define this trigger. What will trigger all this pipeline? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Maybe it's let's say commit or push to the some branch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Okay, then I think the first few steps will be something uh, consisted uh, with the building, uh, st starting. Oh no,
Yeah.
building application, then maybe deploying it on some stage, and then maybe start our tests.
Mm-hmm. In more details, you firstly need to get source of your automation tests.
Mm, oh. Yes, and that's also tricky. It mm, theoretically it may be two. Uh,
Yeah, usually it's
s-
two options. You
uh-huh.
can, for example, if you have GitHub or some kind of it, you can download sources using Git.
Mm-hmm.
And second option, you can have an artifact
Jar.
like a jar package, jar
Mm-hmm.
file. You can download it. There is a thing called Artifactory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also using sometimes, for example, you're working in a bank system and you don't have access to external internet. So you cannot download it from, I don't know, Maven repository. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
you can download it only from local resources. So someone from security team downloading artifact from external internet, adding it to some local network, It's called
Mm-hmm.
Artifactory. Then you can download all artifacts, and you can post your local artifacts to your Artifactory. So you don't need
Mm-hmm.
Git. It it will be local storage, then pushing to Artifactory and etc. So it's some kind of do that.
Super. Thank you for letting me know.
Actually, I need to ask you, but yeah, I described everything.
Uh, yes.
Okay, so I think that was the main things. But for example, if you're doing Jenkins, sometimes you will face a lot of issues. One of the issue, for example, you wanted to generate a little report and etc. So a little report in specific folder on that remote machine. So you need to know some Linux bash commands. I don't know, to
Mm-hmm.
move to another directory or maybe change rights to the specific file so it will be readable and modifiable. So you can
Mm-hmm.
modify it. So can you just name any git bash commands that I mentioned? What you're going to use?
Yes. The most basic command is cd is change directory. Then you mentioned move. It's mv command. On
Mhm,
the input you give first file name. Uh, Maybe it's file name with directory, and second argument is the destination where you want to move it, and mv also acts like renamer of the files.
mhm.
So if you move one file to another in the same directory, I think it will rename it. What else did you mention?
Mhm.
Change mode, chmod command. This This is modificates the access level to the file, so it can be you can by this command you can define, is it executable, is it readable or writable,
Mhm.
and remind me please what else you
No, I think
asked.
that's all. It will be
Oh,
like starter pack for
mm-hmm.
Linux
Okay.
command. I think it will be enough. If you don't have, if you didn't had any tasks for configuring, first task will be not harder than everything that we'll discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I think we need to move to main topic for automation is programming language. What is your
Mm-hmm.
favorite preferable language for current use?
Java.
Okay, could you explain me why Java?
Actually, that's not my personal choice. I don't know what it would be if it would be my choice. Actually, because the company, the project where I started automation was written in Java, so to be in touch with
Mhm.
the colleagues, to maybe ask something from them, to learn something from them, to be on the same page, I also selected Java.
Okay, let's do something like mm, uh, in Spring there is a term called inversion of control. So we can try this way in learning Java. Explain me what from Java a regular automation engineer should know. Like I'm didn't know anything. Explain me what from Java I need to use for automation.
Hmm. Firstly, um, maybe you should know how to install it and know which from which Java actually which levels artifacts it consists. You maybe should know the differences between GRE and GDK. So
Mhm.
GRE allows you only to start Java applications, and JDK allows you not to only run applications but and code
Mhm.
develop. Actually, mm, what else?
And what is Java virtual machine then? Why we need that?
Java virtual machine. Actually, Java consider itself as a cross-platform coding language, and Java is a layer that by which this cross-platform can be done. So instead of writing the particular code to every platform, you just develop a Java machine for every platform. And this Java machine handles all these low-level logic. So you having all these Java machines, you write code once, and
Mm-hmm.
you can see it running on many platforms.
Okay, got it, got it. Thank you. Okay, now let's move like Java is object-oriented language,
Hmm.
yes?
Yeah.
So probably you know something about that. Is it correct?
Yes. Object
Okay,
oriented.
so can you
Uh,
pick
uh,
any paradigm from object-oriented language? I don't know, maybe you can pick any except abstraction, I think. And
oh.
explain me how to use it in automation.
Mm. Okay. Let's pick inheritance maybe. How we use let's firstly talk about what is inheritance. Inheritance is a process when one class can obtain all the variables and methods of other class. The main benefit of this process is code reusage.
Mhm,
So canonical example would be some superclass animal from which we can create some class dog and cat, and
mhm,
we can write common logic in a parent class and some different logic in subclasses.
mhm.
Uh, if you need an examples, regarding to the test framework, actually, how can we use it? First, we can create something like base page class
Mhm.
from which we will instantiate all the page objects, for example. And actually in this base page class, we will set all the common logics of all pages and actually reuse this code in actual page objects. Yes, that's what inheritance, how I see it.
Okay, let's dig a little bit because for me it was one of mistake. You said you can inherit every field from parent class, but there is
Mm.
access modifiers. Can you please mention which access modifiers do you know for fields, for example?
Private, protected, uh, public, uh, and that's all.
Okay, let's imagine that you have a class animal and then class cat that inherits animal, but animal contains only private fields. What will
Oh,
be
no, yeah. Then we cannot inherit private variables. You're right.
okay?
Uh,
So how you need to rework it so you will be able to work with in cat with all that fields?
the main, the most inaccurate way is to make them public, and then you could. But maybe I'm not sure if what protected package or protected modifier does. I suppose protected is you can reach this if it's in one package. If the
No,
classes
no.
are no.
We have private, package privilege or default, protected, and public. So if it's called package privilege,
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
depends on package.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
protected actually it's for inherited. So if
Mm.
you want to, so the next is wider than previous. Private is not wider at all. Public
Mm-hmm.
is the widest. Protected is less wider than public. And package privilege less wider than protected. So inside protected, you can also have everything that inside the package. So for
Mm-hmm.
that case, if it's in the same package, package privilege or default will be enough. If not, then it's good to use protected.
And package privilege, as you said, it's default. So if
Yeah. For
we
example, if you will write it down like, I don't know,
int,
field
uh-huh,
int age, so it will be default package
uh-huh,
privilege.
okay,
You
okay,
didn't put public, you didn't put private, you didn't put protected. So
okay.
by
So
default, if nothing chosen, so
so returning to a question, as I understood, um, protected, yeah, right? Protected fields are good for inheritance.
yep, as I
Uh-huh,
designed for that.
uh-huh. Okay.
Okay, so can you tell me also more thing like, okay, we're using inheritance, but there is specific inheritance. There is a term abstract class and there is a term interface. What's the
Mm-hmm.
difference? What's the usage of abstract classes and what the usage of interfaces?
Mm,
And keep in mind that
technically,
we have only 3 minutes.
okay, I'll keep it in mind. Thank you. Technically, in abstract classes, what we can do, we can leave the empty methods not implemented, but also we can implement something.
Mhm.
But in interfaces, we maybe basically we can implement something, but it's not the main case of usage of it. So basically, we do not implement something in interfaces. Interface
Mhm.
is kind of a contract in which you define only the actions that should be
Mhm.
implemented in implementation classes. And in uh, in abstract classes, uh, you can mention, you can define also variables and some part of the methods. So I think that, oh, and one more thing, you cannot inherit abstract class. So if you have some class that you don't want to be inherited, you can make it abstract. So maybe
What do
the
you mean
usage
by that?
that I cannot inherit abstract class.
You can.
Ah, no, yes, I confused. You can instantiate. You cannot
Yeah, you cannot
instantiate.
create an object of abstract class, but you
Yes,
also
yes, yes, of course.
are you can you create an object of interface?
No.
Okay, so it's not the difference.
Yeah, you're right. So let me finish this thought. Maybe we use abstract class when we when we wanna create many objects that are similar to each other, and we use interface when we know only the actions of these objects that we are
Mhm.
going to be creating, but they can be completely different. Like
Yeah,
plane and bird, they all fly, but they are different.
actually, it should be a verb like flyable, movable,
Flyable. Yeah.
I don't know, something like that. But so you inherit using abstract class, you inherit structure. Using interface, you inherit behavior or actions.
hmm
And there is also one limitation. How many time you can inherit abstract class and how many interfaces you can inherit? Do you know?
Uh, I remembered your question. Let's reconnect. We have less than one
Yeah,
minute.
yeah. One more and maybe you can answer in 10 seconds. How many abstract classes you can inherit?
One,
Yep.
and you
And
can
interfaces?
many interfaces.
Actually, it's 75, 536.
Interfaces you can implement?
Yeah, no
Ah,
more.
uh-huh.
So
Okay.
there is also limitation. Okay,
Good to know.
see you in next video.
Uh-huh.